Hello, my name is Nolan Rhodes, and this serves as the narrated presentation portion of the research assignment for CJ401, Crime and Delinquency. San Bernardino, California. San Bernardino is a medium-sized city with a population of about 200,000. The city is located approximately 60 miles east of Los Angeles in a region what is known as the Inland Empire. Like many similar-sized cities, San Bernardino wouldn't be the first place one would expect a terrorist attack to occur. On the morning of December 2nd, 2015, county health employees were having a Christmas party in a conference room they rented out at the Inland Regional Center. At approximately 11 a.m., two subjects entered the conference room with firearms and homemade explosives, and they began opening fire on the attendees. When the shooting stopped, 14 were left deceased and 22 were left with serious injuries. A detail of this attack was that it took place over a fairly short period of time. Then the subject involved walked into the room where the party was being held, started shooting, and quickly left the scene before police could arrive on the scene. Initially, not even the number of attackers was known to the police and other authorities. However, during the triage aspect of treating the victims, at least one of the victims recognized one of the shooters as a co-worker of theirs by the name of Saeed Rizwan Farouk, and that he and the second attacker fled the scene in a large black SUV. Now a manhunt was on for Farouk and at least one additional shooter. For over 3 hours, law enforcement agencies of all levels, from local to federal, were searching the city of San Bernardino and the surrounding communities for the shooters and possibly the SUV that they made their escape in. Eventually, around 3:30, not far from the Farouk residence in Redlands, California, police spotted the SUV, and at the same time, the inhabitants of the SUV spotted the police, and they pursued to make a getaway. During this pursuit, the inhabitants began firing their weapons at the police officers, and then a shootout began. The shootout was then ended when both the inhabitants of the SUV were fatally wounded. Shortly after this, the identity of the shooters were both confirmed to be Farouk and his wife, Tashfeen Malik. After the shootout took place, and Farouk and Malik were no longer a threat to society, the investigation was fully underway. During this, authorities found nearly 1,600 rounds of ammunition along with the weapons used in the initial attack at the Inland Regional Center were found in the SUV they were driving. Shortly after, authorities were searching the residence located in Redlands, where they found over 2,000 additional rounds of ammunition, as well as the materials to manufacture improvised explosive devices. When further details and evidence surfaced regarding Farouk and Malik, federal authorities began questioning a friend and neighbor of Farouk by the name of Enrique Marquez, who was also a churchgoer with Farouk, and he was a recent convert to the religion of Islam. He actually ended up purchasing two of these firearms for Farouk that were used in the initial attack at the Inland Regional Center. Marquez, though, for whatever reason, he must have felt bad or just didn't want to go through a lengthy investigation. He fully cooperated with federal authorities, and he also claimed that Farouk had planned another attack, or a prior attack that never happened, that would have taken place somewhere around 2011 or 2012, but the plans thankfully fell through. So now that we know the identity of the two attackers, who were they? Saeed Rizwan Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik were both of Pakistani descent. However, Farouk was born in Chicago, Illinois, and was an American citizen, but his mother and father were immigrants from the nation of Pakistan. Farouk, though he was born in Chicago, grew up most of his life right here in the Inland Empire area of California, where he even earned a degree at San Bernardino University in environmental health, which he used this degree. He worked at the county health department. He was an environmental health specialist. The wife, Tashfeen Malik, however, was born and raised in Pakistan, where she attended an Islamic school for women. For a couple years of her life, approximately when she was around 18 years old, she moved to Saudi Arabia to live with family members. The couple, Malik and Farouk, met on an online dating app or service where Farouk eventually formally met her in Saudi Arabia, where he traveled to have his religious pilgrimage over there in Mecca. Due to a couple details of this case, we actually could classify this attack as, in fact, an act of terrorism and not just merely an act of workplace violence. However, terrorism could be a very complex and broad subject, which divided up into many different groups and different categories. However, I'm going to briefly speak on terrorism here for a moment so we could get a better understanding on how we could actually classify this terrorist attack. The two main categories, if you will, of terrorism would be international and domestic. Domestic terrorism is when a person, they choose to attack people, of their own country in their own country for whatever reason. Could be political, could be religious. It's just that it occurs in the nation. An example of this would be the Oklahoma City bombing. International terrorism, however, is when a person or an organization, they target people. It's usually an organization, but they target people outside their nation, and also for whatever reason. Could be religion, could be political, could be anything. But the thing to take away is it's outside the nation, not their own people. 9/11 is a great example of international terrorism. Now, the different subcategories would be like political terrorism. It's where a person or a group performs their attack for political gains. It could be divided up to, left-wing or right-wing terrorism, but it's all for the political gains of whatever this group or their political party. Now, religious terrorism is when a person or group perform their attacks in the name of their religion for, again, the political even gain of the religion, because some of these places where terrorism is a way of life or an aspect of life, if you will, the religions kind of control the government too in those areas, so that the competing religions could also be like competing political parties. That's where it gets very complex. But another group of terrorists, which I would speak on here real quick, is lone wolf style terrorists, which they usually just act alone. There's not too much, pre-existing conditions or ways to spot them out of a crowd or anything like that. They're not influenced by many different groups. They're just influenced by themselves, their own beliefs usually, and they go out and commit an attack out of the blue some days. And for authorities, actually, this is the hardest one to detect, because there's just so little pre-existing information on these lone wolf style attackers. And because of details of this attack, or actually lack thereof details, it leaves us with a lot of questions on even where to begin, how to even classify this attack, or even to the point where we don't have a clear motive. However, though, we could speculate and get a pretty clear idea on how to classify this attack as to what categories of terrorism it actually was. Although the details of this attack mostly align with an act of domestic terrorism, which for the most part it certainly was an act of domestic terrorism, it does share similarities with other classifications, even to the point of international terrorism, because Tashfeen Malik, the wife, she only lived in the U.S. for a short period of time, and she could have been, influenced or radicalized by the people she knew in Pakistan and or Saudi Arabia. And this might also be classified as a religious-based terrorism attack, because, they definitely could have been influenced by religion, which the religion was, Sunni Islam, and the people that knew him at the mosque, claimed that he was kind of separate from everybody. He went there, showed up, prayed, and left. He didn't really congregate or associate with anybody. And the final classification of this attack was that it definitely shares some similarities of a lone wolf attack, meaning that there wasn't too much red flag warnings or anything. They acted alone besides their friend helping them with guns, but he didn't have anything to do with the actual attack that day. So that would have just been the last classification, I think, would be a lone wolf attack. So what we don't know is that there wasn't really a clear motive for the attack except for the dispute with his co-workers. Although Malik claimed that she dedicated the attack to the Islamic State and its leader, Abu al-Baghdadi, however, there's no evidence to suggest that she had any contact with that terror organization or any influence by them at all. Even when and where or even how the couple became radicalized is not known, but we could speculate that somewhere around 2011 or 12 is where Farouk could have been, because he was claimed to be planning an attack, but that's if that neighbor or friend made an accurate claim. What we do know is that they did take it upon themselves to enter this building for whatever reason and kill 14 of his co-workers and injuring 22 more. Because of just the few details actually discovered during this attack, a lot is just left up to speculation even, and just one's own opinion based on the speculation. However, I feel that the couple was ready to perform an attack anyway, and they were just waiting for a reason to do so. And that reason, unfortunately, was just a dispute Farouk had with a coworker earlier that morning while at the Christmas party, which he left early to come back in with his wife and commit the attack. Other than that, just the account of the neighbor, if that was even accurate, in the actual attack, it was just you could look back in hindsight, but there was really nothing to single this couple out as possible terrorists. I mean, Farouk did visit Saudi Arabia for his pilgrimage and to meet Malik, but that in itself isn't really a red flag or anything. I mean, millions of people do that every year, and most of them don't come back terrorists. And unfortunately, because of the style attack of just involving two people, it's really hard for future attacks to happen. Or really hard for authorities to detect these future attacks from happening, because it's just two people and they can get away easily, or not get away, but hide from authorities up until the point they're gonna commit this attack. Well, that concludes my presentation. Thank you and have a nice day.